Asiana plane crash in San Francisco leaves 2 dead and over 180 injured. In Egypt, El Baradei's appointment as Prime Minister now in doubt, and estate agents and property owners protest against market cooling measures.
Good evening. A coalition of estate agents, property owners, and renovation workers held a protest march today to voice their opposition to property market cooling measures introduced by the government. They say the measures are putting their jobs and businesses at risk without effectively bringing down housing prices. Organizers say 23,000 people took part in the rally, while police put the figure at 5,500 at the peak of the protests. Joel De Silva reports.
Estate agents, property owners and renovation workers vented off their anger today at stamp duties introduced by the government to cool down a red-hot property market. They claim property transactions have gone down 50% since the measures were implemented. They say their jobs are on the line because many companies are facing closure. This morning, they marched from Victoria Park to the central government offices to urge the Leung Chun-ying administration to scrap the measures, which they say are not only failing to bring down housing prices significantly, but also hurting their business.
After the government adds so many policies, cannot cannot induce the property price to significant down, and not so from the transaction volume, we can see more people can buy the properties.
I think we need normal volume of transactions so that resources can go to the hands of people really need it. If the volume drop, that means property resources cannot be used in an efficient way.
The government has made good on its pledge to cool down the market by levying an additional 15% buyer's stamp duty on non-resident and corporate buyers and doubling the stamp duty for non-residential property transactions and second home buyers. In order to curb speculation, the government also increased the special stamp duty on flat resales, and it will apply to resales within 3 years instead of 2 as before. While property agents have certainly taken a hit from the government's tax hikes, it could hardly be argued that this city's property market did not need some kind of intervention. Since 2008, housing prices have surged by 120%. In response to today's rally, the government reiterated that the measures were necessary to maintain the steady and healthy development of the property market. Joel De Silva, TVB News.
2 Chinese teenagers died and more than 180 people were injured when an Asiana Airlines flight crashed and burst into flames upon landing at San Francisco International Airport yesterday. As the fire began shooting through the plane, passengers were forced to jump down inflatable slides to safety. Initial investigations reveal the plane's tail hit the ground upon landing.
Flight 214 was being flown on a Boeing 777 airplane that originated in Shanghai, China. After doing a transit stop in Seoul, South Korea, the flight left just after 5 p.m. with 307 people on board, 291 passengers and 16 crew. Passengers included 141 Chinese, 77 South Koreans, 61 U.S. citizens, and 28 people of different ethnicities. Just as the plane was landing before 11:30 a.m., it appeared to be coming in too low, causing its tail to hit the runway, which juts out into San Francisco Bay.
But the tail hit the runway.
After its tail came off, the aircraft bounced violently, scattering a trail of debris before coming to rest on the tarmac.
And then it spun, did a 360, and then a bunch of smoke and fire, of course.
TV footage later showed the fuselage of the plane blackened by fire and the interior gutted. In this age of terrorism, the Federal Bureau of Investigation was quick to put people's minds at ease.
At this point in time, there is no indication of terrorism involved. The FBI will be working closely with the NTSB on this investigation.
Both airport and local firefighters rushed to the scene.
Our aircraft rescue firefighting equipment went to work right away, applied foam and water to the fuselage. When we had arrived on scene, the chutes had already been deployed, and we observed multiple numbers of people coming down the chutes and actually walking to their safety.
Of the 182 that were transported, a total of 49 were in critical condition.
Many were treated for burns, fractures, and internal injuries. The 2 dead were identified as teenage female Chinese nationals who were seated at the rear of the aircraft. This survivor confirms the plane landed way too hard.
There was a loud noise and the whole plane shook. So we thought, that's, something terrible has gone wrong.
Over in Seoul, the president and CEO of Asiana Airlines bowed his head and apologized. The pilot in question is Lee Jong-min, a veteran pilot who spent his career with the airline. He was among 4 other pilots with more than 10,000 flight hours. The crash was the first ever fatal accident involving the Boeing 777. A team of South Korean officials are making their way to San Francisco to do their own investigation on site. Sonia Artero, TVB News.
Chinese authorities say at least 70 students and teachers were on that plane. Xinhua News Agency reported that they were from schools in Shanxi and Zhejiang provinces. The groups were heading to the U.S. to attend a summer camp.
On to other international news now, and there's confusion over whether Egypt's new interim government will appoint reformist leader Mohamed El-Baradei. Once seen as a likely candidate to become Prime Minister, El-Baradei's selection is now in doubt after Islamists refused to work with him if appointed. After earlier reports indicated the former head of the UN's nuclear watchdog Mohamed El-Baradei would be made Egypt's new interim Prime Minister, it now seems the appointment has been put on hold. A spokesman for Egypt's interim president, Adli Mansour, said overnight that consultations were ongoing. After looking like a shoo-in for the new interim government, El-Baradei's appointment was thrown into doubt after the Noor Party, the country's second largest Islamic political group after the Muslim Brotherhood, said it wouldn't work with him. The abrupt U-turn highlights the challenge the Egyptian military faces after it overthrew the country's first democratically elected president, Mohamed Morsi, in a coup kick-started by a people power movement. It must somehow find a consensus among the liberals and conservatives on who should run the country. And consensus may be hard to find, especially as the Muslim Brotherhood and its supporters have vowed to keep on protesting until Morsi is reinstated. Supporters of Morsi have been demonstrating non-stop in major cities, and clashes between them and opponents of the former president last Friday saw dozens killed and hundreds more wounded. Morsi and several key ministers from his government are being detained as the interim administration moves to dismantle his legacy. The Tamarod, or rebel movement, which organised the protests that led to Morsi's downfall, had accused the former president of pursuing an Islamist agenda against the wishes of the Egyptian people and of failing to tackle the country's economic problems. Elsewhere in the region, Turkish police fired tear gas and water cannon to disperse hundreds of protesters in an Istanbul square overnight. A group calling itself Taksim Solidarity had called the rally to enter the sealed-off Gezi Park, but the city's governor warned any such gathering would be confronted by police. Turkey has seen a wave of protests these past few weeks, with hundreds demonstrating against the government of Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan.
A large swath of town in Canada's Quebec province was destroyed after a train carrying crude oil derailed and exploded. Officials say one person died, but the toll could rise. Investigators are looking into claims that the train was driverless when it derailed, as the engineer had parked it some distance away a few hours before that disaster. More details from NBC News.
The massive inferno sent flames into the night sky, fueled by crude oil from ruptured tank cars. The runaway, unmanned 73-car train derailed about 1 a.m., sparking a fire and explosions that shattered the quiet of this lake town 135 miles north of the Maine border.
What's it look like? War zone. A lot of buildings burns.
By daybreak, the skies were still black with thick smoke, visible for miles. Firefighters from around the region, including from the U.S., helped battle the blaze. Crews poured water on tank cars still standing in hopes of avoiding more explosions. Late today, officials confirmed at least one person had died, but would not say how many are missing. Local media reported at least 60 people were unaccounted for. Pictures revealed a devastating sight with as many as 30 buildings destroyed or flattened. A railroad official said the engineer had parked the train outside of town and wasn't in the locomotive when it somehow began rolling down the track. Canadian investigators arrived this afternoon to figure out not only how the train derailed, but the bigger mystery of how it was able to travel some distance without even a crew on board. Meanwhile, more than 1,000 people, about 1/6 of the town's population, have been evacuated. A temporary shelter has been set up at a local school while the search for the missing continues.
Bolivia has become the latest country to offer American whistleblowing fugitive Edward Snowden asylum, as U.S. authorities try to bring him to justice. It joins fellow Latin American allies Venezuela and Nicaragua in offering sanctuary to Snowden, in defiance of Washington, which has warned of repercussions to any country offering him shelter. Bolivia's announcement may have stemmed from last week's incident in which President Evo Morales' plane was forced to land in Austria over suspicions the jet had Snowden secretly stowed on board. Snowden is believed to be holed up in the transit lounge of a Moscow airport after fleeing Hong Kong last month.
And still ahead in our newscast, government urged to carefully assess districts for development. HKJA calls the past year the worst in press freedom since 1997, and the birth of a panda cub at the Taipei Zoo.
And we're back tonight with more local news. Residents in parts of Hong Kong are said to be living in poor conditions because of the city's dense urban environment. And this was revealed by the Planning Department. As Evelyn Leung reports, experts are warning the government to carefully assess areas being earmarked for development.
Our skyscrapers might make for a terrific skyline, but with many of these tall buildings so close together, our health may be at risk. Why is that? Well, in some parts of Hong Kong, the density of properties barely allows any fresh air to flow into some residential homes. This is apparent in districts like Cheung Sha Wan. Miss Lee, who lives there, says that she can't feel the slightest breeze even when there's a typhoon. According to a planning department study, there's been an increase of new developments in Cheung Sha Wan over the past 10 years, and that's affected the airflow in the area. With poor ventilation, summers will feel hotter for residents compared to other districts. The report also found that 5% of developed land in Hong Kong also has this problem. Edward Ng, a professor at Chinese University's Architecture Department, says this is a result of poor urban planning. He says no other countries or cities apart from Hong Kong would allow buildings to be built like a fence along the harbour. Ng says the government can't just take into consideration today's demand for housing while ignoring potential future environmental problems that might be created because of its decision. Lawmaker Frederick Fung agreed with Ng, saying the government has to give this careful consideration. If the government only wants to build homes and doesn't take into consideration the environment and facilities surrounding the properties, this will be a big mistake, he said. In his policy address, Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying announced that 36 plots of land designated for government, institution and community usage could be used for housing, and the government is trying to change the land use for 21 of them, 5 of which the Planning Department warns could have the same problems as Cheung Sha Wan if they are further developed. Evelyn Leung, TVB News.
Well, after residents in Tseung Kwan O successfully blocked the government's bid to expand the landfill there, Some are now trying to do the same thing in Tuen Mun. Opposition has been led by rural leader Lau Wong-Fat, who had supported the plan before a sudden change of heart. But Undersecretary for the Environment, Christine Loh, wants a more realistic conversation on the issue. Diane To has the story.
Rural leader Lau Wong-Fat's sudden U-turn against the Tuen Mun landfill expansion is gaining some momentum. Lau, who's also the village chief in Tuen Mun and a district councillor there, had supported the government's proposal in LegCo's Public Works Subcommittee. But he's now vowing to vote against its funding application in the Finance Committee on Friday. The Democratic Party staged a driving rally with villagers from Tuen Mun in protest against the expansion. They criticised the government for ignoring residents' pleas and threatened to go on a 24-hour hunger strike outside LegCo on Thursday night. People Power also joined in the show, staging a cycling protest with other residents in Tuen Mun. Lawmaker Albert Chan plans to file more than 1,000 motions and offer them to Lau to filibuster the proposal at the Finance Committee meeting. But speaking to TVB News, the Undersecretary for the Environment said she understood that, politics aside, what residents near landfills want is to make sure the living environment is improved.
What they're really saying is they want Tuen Mun as an area to also have certain benefits like road expansion and so on. So this is really the conversation we need to have, and not whether Hong Kong needs or not need the landfill, because I think that issue, I'm afraid, is settled. We do need it.
She said the current administration is determined to catch up on what the city lacks in waste management, but there's so much that needs done, it simply has to come step by step.
The reality is we need to go to LegCo for legislation or for funding one at a time. So in a way, every time we go, there is a danger to say you haven't done enough.
Loh added that in the near future, the government will implement a waste tax because from overseas experiences, including in Asia, charging for waste is the most effective way to reduce waste at source. Diane To, TVB News.
The Hong Kong Journalists Association says the past year has been the worst for local press freedom since the 1997 handover. The association wants the government to introduce a freedom of information law and to oppose pressure from the mainland on national security legislation. Ronnie Samtani has more.
The Hong Kong Journalists Association says Chief Executive Leung Chun-ying has failed to follow up on his promises to defend press freedom and to implement a freedom of information law.
Knowledge is power, and if the government hold all the information and not the public, then they have the power to manipulate the public.
The association compiled a report detailing how and when the government has been secretive about its actions and further restricted freedom of expression. The report mentioned Secretary for Education Eddie Ng's secret visit to Beijing last year at the height of the debate over implementing the controversial national education curriculum. The association criticized the administration for providing information solely through press statements to avoid facing reporters' questions. It expressed disappointments after the chief executive failed to respond to violent attacks on local journalists.
We found that secrecy of the Hong Kong government is on the rise, and it is very important to have the Access to Information Act to put everything under the sun.
The association also fears that Beijing's influence on the local media is growing. HKJA is calling on the government to introduce freedom of information legislation immediately and to examine its policies on releasing official information. In addition, the group wants the government to make an effort to prevent violence against the media. The Hong Kong Journalists Association is asking the government to resist pressure from China to enact the national security legislation. The association plans to submit their report to the government in hopes that they will consider the issues they have raised and act upon them immediately. Ronnie Samtani, TVB News.
All right, Tony, I'm going to bolt it on over to you for some sports
Sonia.
today.
We got some B&B, Bolt and Bartley. But let's talk about track and field first. Usain Bolt sent out a message ahead of next month's World Championships. Bolt ran the fastest 200 metres this year at the Diamond League meet in Paris. Here's Jameson Wong.
You know better than to bet against Bolt. Just as everyone was doubting his form ahead of next month's World Championships, Bolt blasted out of the blocks and powered his way to victory in the 200 meters. The Jamaican ran a 19.73, the fastest time of the year over the distance. Compatriot Warren Ware was second. Last month, Bolt was beaten in the 100 meters by rival Tyson Gay, who skipped Paris.
Right now, I lost 100 meters. A lot of people are making a big deal out of it. It doesn't really bother me. So all I have to do is just train. The 7 people in that lane beside me, if he's one of them, then I'll get it right. I'm a championship person. I'm not worried. As long as I'm in great shape, I'm in no worry.
In the 110-meter hurdles, world record holder Aries Merritt led from start to finish. The American posted a 13.09. And in the women's 100, the woman with 4 names was first to the line. Shelly Ann Fraser-Price of the U.S. held off Blessing Okabade of Nigeria. Jameson Wong, TVB News.
On to tennis, and in the other big sports story of the day, Marion Bartoli of France won her first Grand Slam title as she beat Germany's Sabine Lisicki in the women's final at Wimbledon. Bartoli closed it out in style with an ace on match point. The set scores were 6-1 and 6-4. Bartoli became the first French player to win at the All England Club since Amelie Mauresmo in 2006. The 28-year-old was finally able to win a Grand Slam title on her 47th appearance in a major.
I really felt I was playing probably my best match of the championship. I was doing everything well. I was moving well. I was returning well. I mean, I really played a wonderful match. So it's really amazing to win Wimbledon and also playing well as well. It's just unbelievable, honestly.
And finally, it's a girl. Congratulations to new mother Yuan Yuan, the panda at the Taipei Zoo, who just had her first cub. This little pink panda was born around 8 last night. Zookeepers were excited to watch 9-year-old Yuan Yuan's motherly instincts kick in right away, bonding with her baby cub. It was a long time coming for the panda, who's about 30 years old in human age. She became pregnant through artificial insemination in March, the 7th attempt in 3 years. Yuan Yuan and the father of her cub, Tuan Tuan, were gifted to Taiwan by the mainland in 2008 as a symbol of friendship. The zoo says Beijing has agreed to let the cute cub stay on the island, where it will meet the public in October at the earliest. And that is a wrap of our news. Thanks for watching.
Good night.
Hello everyone, there were sunny intervals with showers today at 5 p.m. An active southwesterly airstream was bringing showers and thunderstorms to the coast of Guangdong and the northern part of the South China Sea. Today's temperatures range from 25 to 31.2 degrees, and the current temperature is 26 degrees Celsius. 37 millimeters of rain has been recorded since midnight. So Freddy, how's the weather tomorrow? Mainly cloudy, there will be heavy showers with squally thunderstorms at first. Showers will ease off with sunny intervals during the day. Temperatures will range from 26 to 31 degrees. Tomorrow's API is forecast at 15 to 65 and the pollution level will range from low to high. The maximum UV index forecast for tomorrow will be about 11. Now, here's the latest global weather update. Cloudy in Shanghai and Xiamen. Showers in Macau, rain in Chengdu. Rain in Seoul, cloudy in Tokyo. Rain in Ho Chi Minh City and Manila. Thunderstorms in Singapore, showers in Jakarta. Rain in Karachi and Mumbai. Sunny in Cairo, sunny intervals in Nairobi. Sunny in Brisbane and Sydney. Cloudy in Toronto and New York. Sunny intervals in Vancouver, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Sunny in London, Paris, Amsterdam, and Zurich. And that's the weather. Have a great evening.